St. Catherine was extremely popular in the early centuries, but actually she was removed from the general calendar when they changed the calendar completely in 1969. It's only in 2002 that she was put back as such in the new missal. She had been unjustly put aside, given her importance both in East and West. Now, she was a bright young lassie, and she was invoked over the centuries also to help students. She was able to study philosophy and oratory, that's the art of speaking, well, and to defend a case. So she was converting people not by the dozen but by the hundred, and they were people of influence, even in high places. So she got into trouble with the authorities in the last big persecution. And eventually they tried to get her conquered in debate, but she was conquering the highest debaters of the period they got. So she was very irritating to the authorities. Eventually it was only torture that was going to be sufficient, they thought. Hence the Catherine wheel. Now, when they have bonfires, sometimes they have Catherine wheels. They go round and round with things coming out of them and creating an effect. Well, this would have been spiky and awful, but she was, it would seem, kept from that torture from being killed, but eventually they beheaded her, and her body miraculously found its way to the bottom of Mount Sinai, where, of course, the burning bush had been, and the monastery of St. Catherine is there, and it's built around the burning bush. The monks say it is the same one. It's venerated there as a place of prayer, where the law would have been given to Moses. So it's a holy place. It's, of course, an Eastern Orthodox monastery, because there was, in any case, no East and West in the early stages. It would have been East, but it carried on that way. But therefore, that makes them unchanged, because the Eastern Church never changes things. So you see history standing still there as a fossil. Interesting. A very, 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 very ancient monastery. And so, there it is, and there is St. Catherine. Now, she is, because of her beauty, nobility, and fidelity, invoked for protection for the purity of girls, as well as by students. And there is a curious thing associated with her in France. They call a girl who reaches the age of 25 and is not married, they say that she is Elle coiffe la Sainte Catherine. She's wearing the bonnet of St. Catherine. Now what it was, it goes back to an old custom that a girl on that one day in the year, if she wasn't married and she was 25, was able to drop a heavy hint to all men around on that social evening in France that she was available, big time, and she would have the right to wear an ornate bonnet. Now, in the customs of the time, only married women wore bonnets, and girls unmarried wore a more modest sort of veil affair. So that's how they were standing out as a sore thumb deliberately. Here, I'm not yet claimed. So it's come into the French language till now, a girl who is 25 and not married, elle coiffe la Sainte Catherine. She's wearing St. Catherine's bonnet. So things have changed, because in those days girls had to, by social standards, get married by that age. It's rather like in the travelling community today, actually. So that is a little parenthesis, but it's something to be borne in mind, because there are half you are female, and therefore it concerns them. Actually more than half, but you're already married. So the question of this, both study and purity, because the word Catherine is linked with purity, the root of pure is in there, and the ancient notion that a girl stayed pure until marriage is to be conserved. It's quite horrid, actually, if one looks around, how, in practice now, a girl, already at student age, very quickly loses her self-respect, and even, if she isn't careful, the notion of intimacy, because by giving themselves easily, they withdraw the link between intimacy and giving. In other words, they give themselves when no one has a right to them. So then it's not so easy to have the notion of intimacy and privacy. And also with regard to the way that girls now, when they grow up, dress, something of that enters into it. They show too much of themselves. It's sort of invitation towards intimacy which no one has a right to until they own that person. So as you're growing up, you little people, be aware of that. Dress modestly, cover yourself, and don't give yourself before you're married. Or if the Lord calls you to give yourself to Him alone, then you're His alone. And then you give your heart and body to Him. And that could happen in a family like this. It's a very special family. So, whatever the Lord wants, but don't exclude that possibility either. And that applies to the boys, because it's not talked about, but it's also on the cards. Now remember, we only come this way once, as the reading reminds us. And at the end of this liturgical year, in the last days now, only 2 more days until Sunday, as the new year starts, new liturgical year, Advent, the end of times comes to our mind. We come to the end. Now, think, if I were now about to breathe my last, going into the beyond, and I'm looking back, how would I have wanted to have lived by this point? In other words, now one can anticipate and think, what choice now do I make so by then to have made the right choice? Because that last point will be reached, and it's prepared now before we launch into the ocean of life. We're still in a nest here, but time passes, and already at this stage, the future is prepared in our mind. So I remember at the age of some of you here, I knew pretty well which way things would go, because in prayer one does pick things up. And even at a young age, it's classical, in a good family, the Lord can call. And remember, there's nothing more blissful than to be close to the author of joy. All the others are a reflection of that. Looking for joy in other people, it's a reflection of that. So going straight to the source, who won't deceive us or let us down, it's very interesting. Therefore, it's not going from maximum to a crash. Maximum to a crash, when it's on an even keel. Jesus never lets down. It's often by looking for too much that we get into a big crash. When we don't have too many demands on life, but receive it as it comes, we're more likely to have joy, because joy is not made of ecstasy and highs, it's made of peace. And peace is found in Jesus. I just finished. Some of you may already have had the loss of a friend or relation even to an accident, that kind of thing. There's a lot of it happening nowadays. And also, suicide, as you know, is very popular. It's very à la mode. It's kind of alternative. It's even advertised on internet and that kind of thing. So, what happens? Do you know what happens? Well, I'll tell you. We know from people who have been there and back, because some people have managed to get them back sometimes, they see things. As soon as the soul has gone out, they cop on. They see all the graces that they could have had, all the merit they could have gained, but nothing can come again, because there's no more time. Girls sometimes see the children they would have had. They also become straight away aware of the pain they've caused their parents and friends. So suicide solves nothing. This creates another problem. I just finished. At the end then of this liturgical year, put yourself mentally at your tomb. That's my cross, that's my name on it, that's my date of birth, and that's my date of death. It will happen now. Before I get there, before I start, which way will this go? This way or that way? Lord, I hand it over to you. I give you back my time. Take control.